WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by JW Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. I want to thank you for being with us today. Each and every Tuesday at 2:30, we come on the air, and we're coming to you from Channel 16, Star Communications, Channel 16, WCLN Radio. Every week at 2:30, it's a replay at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, Thursday. The subject today is something near and dear to everybody's heart, and it builds around children. And the other word is it builds around the sadness of children being victims. We have with us today Chris Sessoms, Shannon Barber, and we've got a detective with the Sampson County Sheriff's Department, Chris Godwin, is with us. And you may think this is kind of a strange mix of folks, but we're going to unfold this for you in an area of something that you really need to know about, because there's a dire need for support and assistance in this area as this show comes on today. Chris Sessoms, a lot of folks knows your name. They are aware of some of the things you're doing with an organization called Helping Hands of Sampson County, which is a nonprofit. I want to open with you today to kind of give us an overview of why Helping Hands and Chris Sessoms is engaged now in a major advocacy effort for the Child Advocacy Center here in Sampson County.
When I was approached by Jimmy Thornton about this project, he and I spent many hours on the phone discussing it. But Helping Hands is based around just supporting our any first responders, whether it's a nurse, a doctor. That's what our group is made of, in being able to say thank you and assist them in any way that we can. So when this project came to me and I spoke with Jimmy, realizing that this is not just helping children, it's supporting our first responders who go out and do what they need to do with these children. So that's really why Helping Hands got involved. One of the things that we have is contact with many churches, because we've been doing this now for about 6 years. And I feel like they have learned to trust us. They know who we are. They know the foundation of what we are. So we have sent out letters to every church in Sampson County talking about the Child Advocacy Center and the fact that, hey, this thing can shut down if they don't have money to go forward. And we are not asking the churches to take from their budget. We're asking them to do a love offering to protect these children, to help these children, and to give our county the support it needs.
And I think it's a good opening. Shannon, I want to kind of segue to you as the director of the Child Advocacy Center to talk to us about the Child Advocacy Center. I know in the past, I've had you on a couple of years ago. We kind of went through this process a bit, but I guess I'm like everyone else. Every so often, I need a kind of a refresh where you hit that button and get a little more information. The Child Advocacy Center has been a huge asset to victims, to children that are in situations that they did not put themselves, that need assistance, that is in dire need of somebody to step up. Tell us a little about the history of the CAC, the Child Advocacy Center, and why Shannon Barber stepped into this picture early on and said, I'm willing to give a huge part of my life to deal with this dire need here in this county.
So back in approximately 2012, probably a little before then, a group of people that worked with child abuse, Detective Godwin being one of those, some DSS staff members, knew about the CAC model. They went and visited another CAC and decided we needed this in Sampson County. Several counties had that across the state, and Sampson County did not. So actually, Detective Godwin reached out to me and invited me to a meeting where we talked more about this process. And at that point, I was not working and had time to volunteer to get this program up and running. And so we started working with our partner agencies in the county and developed our plan, policy, protocol for handling child abuse cases and starting the CAC. That was back in 2012. We started seeing children in 2015. So we've been seeing children for 6 years now. To tell you a little bit about what the Child Advocacy Center is, we provide services to victims that have been physically and or sexually abused. We also see children that have been witnesses to severe crimes. We do forensic interviews of the child at the CAC. We provide medical exams. We provide advocacy services and help prepare them for court. When a child would report abuse in the past, they would oftentimes report that at school because that's the place that they feel safe and they build relationships with their teachers. They would report this at school, and then by the time the case was over, the child had probably had to tell that story about 15 to 17 times, over and over and over. So I always like for people to think about the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you and imagine telling that story to 15 to 17 different people 15 to 17 different times. That would be difficult for any adult to do, let alone a child that's been through something traumatic. So one of the main things with the CAC is the child tells their story one time at one place to one person, and then they don't talk about it anymore until the case goes to court. Because when the child comes for that forensic interview at the CAC, everybody else that's involved with the case, the investigators, DSS, they will come to the CAC and they will watch that interview through a closed circuit television so that the child doesn't have to talk to them and tell them that story as well. They only have to tell it that one time. Everybody hears it at the same time and gets the same information.
And the Child Advocacy Center, I guess, Detective Godwin, is something that prior to this, as Shannon was just pointing out, it made your job as an investigator even harder to try to pull all these pieces together. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir. Before the Child Advocacy Center, we had to do our own interviews most of the time. When I first started working these types of cases in 2007, I was the only person in this county other than a select few DSS workers that was trained to talk with children in this aspect. There's a certain way that Shannon conducts her interviews, and that is, for trial purposes and prosecution purposes. I had been to that training early on because there was just no one else to do it. And that presents a multitude of problems. For one, I feel that, females do a much better job at interviewing children. They have that motherly instinct and they have that nurturing about them. I'm 6'2", 230 pounds, and I'm talking to a 5-year-old in her home. I have no other place to talk to her about something that really bad that's happened to her, probably the worst thing that's ever happened in her life. The CAC model makes it so much easier to take them to a place that they feel safe. They have people that they can talk to that will build rapport with them. I never had those opportunities. We had a CAC that opened up in Fayetteville before our CAC in Clinton, and we would have to travel to Fayetteville to get that done. Since we were out of county, Cumberland and Fayetteville PD came before we did, so we had to schedule our appointments around them. It took a lot of time out of my day to travel to Fayetteville. Sometimes these interviews last a couple of hours. So by the CAC being here in Clinton and Shannon taking that over, it has dramatically increased our productivity as far as these cases are concerned. I feel like we have a very good working relationship with Shannon and her staff, and we can pretty much get our appointments done very quickly, usually within the same week that we receive the report.
Shannon, when Detective Godwin just referred to you and your staff, how many people does it take to run your operation?
Well, because we are new, we're not able to offer all of the services that a lot of CACs do, but we're building up to that. Right now, I provide the forensic interviews. I'm the director here at the CAC, and then I also provide the forensic interviews. But I did just have one other staff member get trained in this training that Detective Godwin referred to as a backup interviewer in the event that I'm not here, because that has happened in the past where I've had to be out unexpectedly and there was nobody to do those. So we have just recently had someone trained that'll be able to do that. We have an interpreter on staff. And she is our front desk person that screens everyone that comes in. And then we also have an advocate, and that person works with the family to determine what kind of needs they have or that the child has. That person works with them to link them to resources they need in the community, such as therapy. Whatever things that child may be struggling with, the advocate works with them in getting those things in place. She also will follow that child and make contact with them throughout the whole investigation process. It may be 2 years before the case actually goes to court. And so she will keep communication with them, checking on them, making sure the child is still getting their needs met, and then prepare them for trial once the case is ready to go to court.
Shannon, I noticed that over the past years, it's been well over 100 cases a year that you've been averaging between 125, 100, even up to 170. And this is a question, I guess, for both you and Detective Godwin. That's and we'll probably follow up because we're going to need to take a break in just a minute, but we want to follow up on this. That's a pretty heavy load when I hear the number of people you have, and when I hear Detective Godwin talk about his workload and the other things I'm sure, Detective, that you're involved in. It's a pretty heavy load. So what I want to do is maybe set the stage when we come back from break. We could talk about that a bit to give the folks, I guess, kind of a visual, if you will, of what's going on in this world and how heavy this load is to carry. Clearly, you need some additional help because this is going on in a multilingual environment. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about that a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. The name of the show is We Should Know. Call a friend. This is information that everyone needs to know more about, and they need to know how they access this as well. We'll be back in one moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air Tuesdays, 2:30 each and every Tuesday. WCLN Radio, Star Communications, Channel 16. Our guests today are three people. Chris Sessoms with Helping Hands of Sampson County, Shannon Barber, the director of the Child Advocacy Center, and Detective Chris Godwin with the Sampson County Sheriff's Department. Thank each and every one of you, not only for being here today and talking about the subject we're talking about, but for the job and the services you're rendering this county and the citizens in this county. With that said, I want to kind of go to this idea of what's going on, not only with the Child Advocacy Center, but kind of to give people a behind the curtain look at that, Detective Godwin. You have, it seems to me, I cannot even describe a word other than overwhelming job to try to keep up with the numbers of victimized children that you face investigating on a monthly basis. I'm going to kind of break it down. On an average of 10 or more a month, and considering all you have to go through, tell us how you manage that process.
Well, I have a couple of stats for you. Last year, 2020, our department received 168 DSS referrals for child physical and sexual abuse. Each of these cases are different. Some can be handled within a couple of days. Most take weeks or months to complete. There's a lot of people who have to be talked to. There's, of course, the forensic interviews that are done by Ms. Barber. We have records we have to get. We have to work in conjunction with DSS. And there's only two of us at the sheriff's office. There's myself and Detective Worley. We're the only ones that work these type of cases. Plus, we're also assigned other cases that have to be worked as well, to include homicides and serious crimes like that, which take up some of our time. To answer your question, it's very hard to manage that caseload with the amount of personnel that we have. Every case is important. Every case is a priority. However, we prioritize based upon perpetrators having access to the children, being in the home. That obviously would be what we would consider a high priority case. We need to do something with that case right now since the perpetrator has access to the child. And then we have, others that are family members who do not live in the home, or people who do not live in the home. And then, more of our lowest priority cases would be abuse that happened years and years and years ago, and it's just now reported. They all are worked, but we do, like I say, have to prioritize so we can handle that workload.
Let's talk a minute, and I'm going to just kind of spring this out to all of you. It seems to me, and listening to Detective Godwin, there's an emotional impact that's occurring here, obviously and clearly for the victim. Also, it seems to be very clear for family members and those associated. There's a huge emotional problem that exists. And the other part is for law enforcement people. Shannon, for your folks, how do you handle, to me, not only this is a tragedy, but I cannot imagine that's my job, as Detective Godwin just pointed out, looking at this kind of horrific thing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. How do you handle it?
I think we all that work in this, of course, have good days and bad days. Some cases are much harder than others, but I think we all have a passion for what we do, and knowing that we're helping that child and this case is going somewhere is kind of what drives us. I'm not going to say that we don't carry it home sometimes. We try not to do that, but there are some days that it's just difficult. Some of the things that you have to see and hear are very difficult. But I think it's just knowing that we are making a difference. And when they thank you, I have a book in our front lobby that I have children, just if they want to write a message in there and leave it for other children to read. And sometimes I'll just go out to the lobby and pick that book up and look through it. And it truly warms my heart to see the things that children will say for other children to read, and saying, it's okay, these people are nice, they're going to help you, don't be afraid. And so those are things that helps my staff when we actually see that we're making a difference. And we may not feel like we helped that child that day, but the things that they write down and tell us afterwards is rewarding to us.
Detective Godwin, I want to kind of get your comment on this, because it's clear that we're in a time in our history that there are, I'm not going to say outright efforts, but it seems to me outright efforts that law enforcement is kind of under a microscope, and many times has been demonized for simply carrying out the law that they didn't pass, that they didn't put in the legislature, that the legislature passed it, and you guys is carrying that out. With all of that going on, how do you work through that, and how do you deal with the weight of wearing that badge?
Well, that's a touchy question. We are scrutinized. We are held to a higher standard. We expect that. We expect to be held to a higher standard. We should be. We are tools of the justice system. That's what we are. We do not make those laws, like you said. We enforce them. And I feel like we enforce those laws fairly. I handle that stress because I know that I'm doing a good job, and I know that I'm doing good for people. So that gives me my peace of mind. Chris
Sessoms, one of the things strikes me with Helping Hands, you just recently went through a big promotion of Back the Blue in Sampson County, in which your organization, and I would say you can kind of give us more specifics on this, but your organization numbers well over 50 people that's involved in supporting the mission of that organization. And law enforcement is one of those things that you guys have stepped up and said, we're going to recognize these men and women that wear badges. And many of us admire you for that in your organization. When you hear this, is this part of the, I guess, push for you and your organization to do something?
In the past, everything we've done is either provide a meal or some kind of event that said thank you. This is really different for us, but the more the committee talked, the more we felt like it was time for us to step out and do different things. When we have a first responder in any shape or form that cannot perform a duty because they don't have the proper tools, then that's what we need to do as a committee, is to step back up and go, okay, how do we help them and how do we accomplish this? One of the surprising things to me with this event was that we had 3 pastors in the meeting the day that we spoke to Shannon and Sheriff Jimmy Thornton. And all 3 pastors came to me and said, I had no idea this existed. And since then, I've gotten calls from pastors as we've sent the letters out. And they've gone on the website and looked. But their question is, how in the world do these people survive on a daily basis with these hurting children? And some of them, I don't have answers for because I'm not doing that. But we as Helping Hands want to support that so that those people do have the tools they need, even though their heart is carrying it home many times.
Shannon, as I listen to each one of you, I think it's important maybe that we look at the process part of this. Do you have folks that come to your organization that just walk up to the door and say, so-and-so is going on? Or if they do you refer that back to Detective Godwin and the Law Enforcement Investigation Unit? And I ask that question for all of you to think about. We're in a society now with everything that's going on, as many moving parts is going on, that often folks don't really know exactly where to start. And I think on this particular subject, both to you and Detective Godwin, people may know something that may be pretty horrific. But yet that level of just where's that switch I push? Where's the button that says I need help now? And I don't necessarily want to be called out for it. Talk to us about that a little bit.
So if anyone calls our center or shows up, and we have had that happen where they know that there's abuse going on, we would refer them to DSS or law enforcement. Before we see a child, all of our referrals have to come from either DSS or law enforcement. There has to be an open investigation for us to be able to see a child and provide services. So we will redirect them back to that avenue, and that's where they need to go. We see all cases that come through DSS and law enforcement that are abuse come to the CAC. They always refer them here to have the services. We see much more law enforcement only cases because DSS only has the cases where the abuser is a caretaker of the child. And a lot of times it may be a family member, but it's not a caretaker. So we get a lot more referrals from law enforcement on that end, but we also receive referrals from DSS that they're both working on.
Detective Godwin, same question kind of for you. And if we have to run into a break here, we will, but I do think this needs to be addressed. I feel like the public as a whole needs to understand that there's a way to make a difference. If it's something they're aware of, if it's something they're not sure about. When we come back, I just kind of hold this to when we come back from break, but I want you to kind of respond to that in the sense of letting folks know that if they reach out to you, I'm a big advocate of making sure folks know law enforcement is their friend, not their enemy. And law enforcement is there to help them. And you guys, ultimately, at the end of the day, are public servants. And underlining that word servant, I want people to be able to get through the door. So when we come back from break, I want to you just share your heart feeling with us about how that works and what you want the people to know and do if they know something's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about an issue related to victimization and children that you really need to know about. And this show is going to tell you how you can help and step up.
Many things have been stolen away during this time of uncertainty. No crowds to cheer on their favorite teams. Applause and pageantry have been stripped away. Thieves are looking to make your home empty and silent. Star Communications has the answer you are looking for. Security by Star. Automation and affordability along with friendly service makes for a security choice that is sure to keep your family cheering.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to give you an email address that you can continue to email us. WeShouldKnow.edu@gmail.com. WeShouldKnow.edu@gmail.com. I appreciate your suggestions, comments, commentary, questions, whatever you may have, let us know. Over 10 years now, about 10 and a half years, been on the air, and I've heard from a lot of people, continue to hear from you, and it's always a pleasure to listen to the folks in the community and try to bring you information and education that's helpful not only to you, but everyone in our community. And one of those subjects that we're talking about today is exactly that. It's helpful to everyone in the community. It deals with victimization of children, and the Child Advocacy Center is at the forefront with that. Detective Chris Godwin with the Sampson County Sheriff's Department. I told you I want to kind of follow up when we come back from break and talk about folks reaching out and how you deal with that and what you would want to say to people today as you have the microphone about what they need to do, even if they suspect something, even if they're not sure about something. And all of us, me included, have probably seen things sometimes that I'm going, man, I just wish that child wasn't treated like that. But other folks may have seen something even more bizarre. Tell us how the Sheriff's Department and how law enforcement is engaged with that process.
Well, I'd like to start off and say, the Sheriff's Office is here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People can call us anytime. They are going to get a response. If they need to report something, if it's after hours, a deputy is going to come to their house, or he may do that over the phone. It depends on the severity of the report. We're here for everyone. We need people to speak up and speak out and talk to us. We can't do this by ourselves. There's just absolutely no way. And I'll give you an example of that. Last week, we had a child abduction. Some of you may have seen the Amber Alert that came out last week for the child that was abducted. That was solved. Obviously, the Sheriff's Office was and other agencies, FBI, DSS, we were all working to try to find this child. But I'll give you one guess as to how she was found. It was a person that spoke up, that seen the Amber Alert, saw the vehicle, and called us and spoke up and helped. So it's very important for people to report things. Even if they're not sure what's going on, they can still call us. We'll check it out. We'll try to make some kind of determination if whether or not it's something that we need to investigate. I don't want anyone to feel reluctance in calling us if they see something that doesn't look right. Or it's everyone's duty to report things that happen to children, whether they're neglected, abused, or dependent. People have to call us and tell us.
Detective Godwin, is there a number that folks could call that they would be, I guess, not necessarily identified, that they could give information? I know some counties have numbers for all kinds of criminal offenses that folks can call Does Sampson have a number like that they don't, because oftentimes they feel like if they call that somebody's going to trace their number, or they're going to pull them into the case, or they'll be somehow in conflict, especially if you're dealing with families. Is there anything like that exists? And I would get your answer, then I would segue to Shannon and see if she has a number as well.
We used to have a tip line, but I apologize. I'm not sure if that's still active or not, or who monitors that. But for things like this, dealing with the children and stuff, people can absolutely remain anonymous. There's no civil liability for reporting something. In fact, DSS, if you report something to DSS, you are kept anonymous. If you report something to us and you wish to remain anonymous, you can. You do not have to give your name. We just want people to reach out to us if they see problems.
There's a number, I think it's 511, that folks can call. That's not an emergency number, but they can dial 511 and it actually disseminates their call to wherever it needs to go. Is your folks in line with that number? And Shannon, are you part of that system? If someone dials 511 and says, I've got some information to report about a child being victimized, do they automatically send that to the Sheriff's Department or Child Advocacy? Which one of your organizations would get that?
I'm not sure exactly how that works. If it needs to come to law enforcement, I'm sure it would. You can call the sheriff's office number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That would be 910-592-4141, and you're going to talk to a person. We don't have electronic phone trees or anything like that. You're going to talk to a person if you call that number.
And that's 24/7.
Yes, sir. After 5 o'clock, it's routed to our communications center, and a live person will answer that phone and talk to you.
And that number sounds very familiar. I think it's been around quite a few decades. So
yes, sir.
That's an easy number to remember. Shannon, you want to follow up on that, because I think where we're at now is in that juncture that I want to try to get people dialed into. It's easy to say something if you see something, but a lot of folks would say to me, well, I'd say something, but nobody's ever going to do anything. How do you respond to that, Shannon?
If a case is reported, it's always investigated. Even if it's not investigated by DSS, they have a screening policy. If it meets their criteria for taking the case, then they take it. But if not, they always send that referral to law enforcement. So if someone reports something and it's not, and they call DSS and make that report, and it's not necessarily going to be investigated by them, it will be investigated by law enforcement. It goes to them and has to be investigated, and that's when it'll come to us.
Just recently, I had a lady on, remained anonymous. Her last name was Jan. The world she works in is human trafficking and issues related to that. I've had a number of folks call, email that was just really shocked at what's happening in the world of human trafficking. When I look at the numbers of Detective Godwin, what you just talked about, and the volume of child abuse and victimization going on, we have equally a problem. And I'm wondering if there are crossovers that exist in that world as well.
We've been very fortunate as far as the human trafficking is concerned. I've had a couple of cases that would be qualified as that. Not quite what you see on TV and things like that, but nonetheless, human trafficking does exist in Sampson County. I think it's on a smaller scale. At least I hope it is. There could be some cases out there that's just not reported. Again, that's why it's very important that people call us if they see something that doesn't look right.
Shannon, we mentioned a while ago bilingual. We know we have a large Hispanic population, a Latino population in our county. We have a lot of farm workers. We have folks sometimes coming through that we don't necessarily know whether they have green cards, identification, whatever. They have trouble communicating. I know Detective Godwin faces this regularly. Is that something that you hear from? Do you hear from the Latino community?
We do serve the Latino community. A lot of times, even with the children speaking English, the parents don't speak English. And so we do have an interpreter on staff to be able to communicate and work with those families. They're not That is not the largest population of children that we see, but we do have children from the Latino community.
How is the education community, particularly the teachers in our schools and not only elementary schools, but middle schools and the area that seems to have this kind of preponderance of more cases, are teachers aware of what they need to look at, and do you engage teachers?
We absolutely do. When the pandemic first started, the end of last school year, everybody was at home. Everybody was starting to use this virtual format. And so our team took advantage of that and went in and trained almost every Sampson County school. We went into their staff meetings on Zoom, and it was myself, someone from DSS, my advocate. We had someone from law enforcement, and we had our district attorney's office represented. And we talked to the teachers about the whole process of when you suspect something, what happens, when you call DSS, what to expect, what's going to happen from there, and kind of walk them through what the whole entire process would be so that they would be more aware, because they are the ones a lot of times that children do disclose to.
Detective Godwin, I want to kind of segue to you because this is a thing of course, I talk to law enforcement people quite often, believe it or not, probably more than folks know, but I hear a lot of times that a lot of cases and discovery of cases now in the world of social media is discovered via technology and information that is discovered on social media platforms. Do you pick up stuff like what we're talking about today via social media?
We do. We are. I am sworn with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force that is headed up by the SBI. It's a national task force. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they monitor a lot. Well, most people send their tips to them, and they monitor that, and they will refer cases to us that come through on social media and different things. That could be a child asking for help on social media. It could be child pornography or different things like that, or some kind of sexual abuse that may be taking place on social media, like a solicitation of a child or something. They monitor those things, and we get those types of reports quite often as well.
It seems to me that where we are now in society, that people are becoming somewhat, I guess, open, and they say things and do things on social media platforms that just amazes an old guy like me. So I look at it and just shake my head. Really, you said that. So when we come back from break, we're going to talk about what you, our listeners and viewers, can do to support the Child Advocacy Center. And we're going to hear more from Chris Sessoms about what her organization intends to do with that, and point the finger directly at you and say, here's what you need to do. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back in one moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Welcome back. We're on our last segment coming up, and we're talking about the Child Advocacy Center. We're talking about victimization of children. We're talking about at least two people that see that on a daily basis, Shannon Barber and Detective Chris Godwin. And we also have Chris Sessoms on with us today. And Chris Sessoms is, like everybody on this show, she's in that category of people I call doers. Chris is known for doing something about something and making a difference. And one of the ways she's been doing that over the years, in fact, Chris, I was looking at a comment you made, and this is a quote from 2016. You were talking about emergency responders, and your quote was, emergency responders who risk their lives on a daily basis for our health and safety. That quote to me sums up what your organization represents. You decided to step up years ago and say, somebody needs to do something about this. We've got plenty of analytics of people not doing things. So I'm going to segue it to you to tell us how we're going to help the Child Advocacy Center and Detective Godwin in this endless battle that they face with victimization of children.
I guess one of the biggest things with the Advocacy Center is a lot of people are mistaken when they read the sign that says Sampson County Advocacy Center. They feel like it's funded by Sampson County. Through our meeting, we realized it was not. If they don't have individuals who step up to the plate or different grants or things, this does not exist. Also, I think it's big for people to know when they turn a child's name in, what's going to happen with that child. I ran into a phone call from a friend who has never turned it in because they loved the child. It was a relative, and they didn't want the child to go through a lot. So having this advocacy center tells them that this child is not going to have to say it 17 times. They're going to be able to say it once, and they still love them. They want to protect them. So it's important that this advocacy center stays alive in our county, and for our first responders to be able to have access to it so they can do what's needed done and keep the child from going through so much turmoil.
I think that said is probably as critical a piece. And I want to kind of throw in, and Shannon, tell me if this number is correct, 910-490-9100, 9100. Is that the contact number for your office?
That is the number for the CAC.
Okay, so that is somebody that wanted or had a concern. Can they call and just say, I probably don't want to say who I am, but I've got a situation going on. What do I need to do? Could they do that by calling that number?
Sure. And then we will direct them to either law enforcement or DSS. And we can also instruct them on what's going to happen when they make that call, because that is what scares some people, is what's going to happen when I call that number. So we can talk them through that.
Chris Sessoms, one of the things that you're doing, and I think I'm looking also not only at this situation, but some of the past things you've engaged the community in a very aggressive way. And one of the things I think you've done here or planning to do here, and you mentioned a while ago, engage the churches. One of the things Sampson County, people passing through, not only Sampson County, but I'm going to say Eastern North Carolina as a whole, is you don't have to drive far before you see a steeple. So churches make up the gravity that holds us together. Churches are the foundation that drive us. What kind of response do you feel like you want to get? Have you gotten any response thus far? And what does folks listening and watching today need to know to engage in this effort that you're putting forward?
Well, we sent out letters to 196 churches. Believe it or not, we have that many in the county. We are getting responses. One of the things that I think has been amazing to me is all of the functions that we've ever done, we've gotten checks, but I'm getting notes this time. People are actually commenting on this project. So it's really touching the hearts of people. One of the comments I made to a pastor was that if everybody that attended a church in Sampson County gave $5, that would be awesome. And that we would have money more than we would even have to worry about the rest of the year. But the organization really runs through the churches and their gifts. We have done businesses in the past, but we chose not to do that this time because they're hit so hard with the pandemic. But we felt like this was a heart thing. And when you touch the people's heart in a church about what's happening to the children in our county, they will respond.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things, and this is for anybody that we're on the discussion today here, one of the things that strikes me is just looking in the eyes of a victim, a child. I'm a guy who got grandchildren now, believe it or not. Detective Godwin, I know you think I'm probably 25, but I've actually got grandchildren. So I think about my grandchildren. I think about children as a whole, children I know. And how does somebody not do something? We're offering today, folks, an opportunity not only for you to understand that you can make a call if you see something going on, and that's critically important, but also, Chris Sessoms, you're saying here's a way you can do something to ensure that door is open for that child, for that victim.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, one of the questions that is asked, and we as a committee discussed because of who we are and what we stand for, is that the funds coming in will be held in the Helping Hands account in a separate line, so that as it's needed, when they let us know, we will write a check. Some people were concerned that the money would go to different places in the county. And so when I tell them, don't worry, we're going to watch it, we're going to monitor it, we're going to know, they're just much more secure in giving the money, which surprises me, but they really are. So anyway, we will monitor that money. We will take care of it. Every dime of it will go to the Child Advocacy Center.
Shannon and Detective Godwin, what are some of the key things that you need that money could buy? If somebody steps in like Chris Sessoms and says, look, I have $1 million that's been collected, what comes to your mind that you need to help deal with this, I'm going to call it crisis, this demonization that exists in our community? Since we're talking about churches, well, I won't necessarily start preaching, but we can talk about demonization. But I think, what would you do with that? What are some of the things that you need right now? And either one of you first.
We have daily expenses at the CAC, and we are funded through grant funding. Our grants received about a 30% cut this year from the previous year. And also with the pandemic and the new way that we're having to do things, we've had to purchase lots of equipment to be able to do mobile interviews with children. Things to do when our first responders are not able to be here. We've been able to call them in and let them watch remotely. We've also had to purchase sanitizing equipment to sanitize the office between children that are coming in. So there's a lot of things that we've had to purchase this year that has caused our expenses to go up. And then there are also cuts in our budget for funds that we've been receiving. So just daily expenses at the CAC and making sure the CAC is able to continue providing the services is utmost important at this point. There are things that we would love to do in the future. We have rooms here in the center that we would love to see remodeled in those rooms, someone to take on those rooms and actually make those where those rooms are usable. We would like to add additional services like therapy services or group sessions on site, and having somebody kind of help us with that. When we moved into this building, we set up for what we were providing at this moment, but as we continue to grow, which we will have more expenses that'll come in for things like that.
Detective Godwin, I'll get your comment on that, if you can contain it to about 60 seconds.
Sure. First and foremost, we definitely need to keep the CAC open. But if there is some extra money left over after that, if I had to have a Christmas wish list, that would be to have another detective to work these so we could give more attention to these victims. As it is right now, 168 cases, just DSS cases divided between 2 detectives. You can do the math on that. That's a lot. I would love to have another detective so we can do a better job at investigating these and take more time with these victims.
Based on your comment earlier, Detective Godwin, would that detective be helpful if they were a female?
I would say absolutely. I'll take anybody that can do a good job, but a female would be preferable.
I'm all about empowering women, so I think that's a great idea. Chris Sessoms, I want to try to get to closing comments. Telephone number, folks can reach you kind of as a wrap, about 30 seconds here to a wrap for us.
Okay. Anytime you want to reach me, call me on my cell. It's 910-596-7005. We also have a P.O. box, which is 475 in Clinton. If you want to mail your donations in, that's where we collect most of our donations. But I also want to say that while we're doing this, it's something that we can do again, but the Advocacy Center needs people to help with fundraisers. So if you'd like to help or in any way or form, please call me or feel free to call Shannon. I have no problem in helping with that. But Helping Hands does keep me very busy. But if you feel a need to help children through the background and don't really want to get involved, please call and join the fundraising efforts to try and keep the money flowing in for this agency.
Okay. And Chris, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for Helping Hands. I'd like to say to everybody out there, Helping Hands is also your hands and what you do with those hands. This is a way for you to do that, whether you're 17, 70, 10, 55, whatever your age, you can do something. And part of that is what we do, is try to educate and inform people. I want to thank each and every one of our guests for being with us today. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today, because you make this show what it is. You give us the direction and you show us where true north is, and we check that compass every day to make sure we're headed in that direction. So we look forward to seeing you again next week right here. And always, we like to say our closing statement is, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host JW Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.